is to, okay. The goal here is to help us establish communication with our dream maker. I remember seeing one of Betty's videos, some woman was asking her, it's like, well, how do you know spirit's in touch with you? And, Betty's like, well, do you need a full-blown apparition? Oh, maybe not, right? It's like, and when I saw that video, it really struck me that, um, to my mind, spirit's always trying to talk with us. It's always trying to talk with us in dreams. And then I was thinking about the presentation today, this morning, and I was like, wow, it's like it has been talking to us thousands and thousands of times, every one of us in our lives. And if we've had multiple lives, thousands of times in those thousands of lives. And so my goal here is to try and intrigue you, introduce you to some language to start listening to your dream maker, because it really wants to help you. My opinion. Another thing I want to say off the bat is that I studied, well, I worked and lived at a yoga retreat center in Hawaii. Um, it was run by my wife and her business partner for 12 years. In that time, I offered dream interpretation. I also studied Hawaiian spirituality with the local kahuna, and I've done energy work and chakra toning. Um, and so, one of the things I got from my Hawaiian teacher, he said that the Hawaiian kahunas, for lack of a better word, teachers are, they don't believe that all knowledge is in one school. So what I'm presenting today is just one take on dreams. If you have different takes or it doesn't resonate with you, that's fine. Also, in that spirit, when I do a dream interpretation, its value is in how much it resonates with you. I'm just reflecting what I feel the dream is communicating, but its resonance is what's important. Um, a little bit about my dream training. When I was in Hawaii, there was a man there who we called Dream John. People were known by their first names because the Big Island was kind of small in a way. It was a community. There was Mango John, there was Sugarcane John, and you sort of knew them by what they offered. So Dream John uh, happened to be an ex-CEO of some high-tech company, and he was in recovery. But he finished. He retired. I felt like he had plenty of money. He didn't work, and he had a house in Hawaii. And after he retired, he decided to study Jungian psychology. And so he got what he called all but a shingle out on Jungian psychology. He did all the training, but didn't want to go into a formal practice. And so his dream was to go around the world and establish what he called barefoot dreamers, dream clubs. And so he established one on the Big Island, and I worked with him for at least 2 years and got fairly deeply into it. So this, in a way, is the start of me trying to pay this forward because it's been valuable in my life. Um, I see dreams and dream symbolism even in the waking life. The Tibetans would say this, and many cultures would say this is also a dream that we're in. Um, and so some of my interpretations a bit influenced a bit by Tibetan dream yoga. Some also influenced by there's a institute in Santa Barbara called the Pacifica Institute, and they do a thing called dream tending. So just some of my influences. And then the last bit I want to bring up is that by training, I'm an engineer. I got a degree from MIT in electrical engineering and computer science, humble brag. And I I've until recently I've struggled between the two worlds. I'm invested in the material plane, I'm invested in the spiritual plane, and I recently saw a video that brought it together for me. I relate to the idea of being in a second wave of the new age that's coming, where I have a foot in both realms, and I am to act as a bridge between the two. So that's sort of a bit about me. Um, uh, I do also want to call out my brother-in-law, Joshua TZ, who's in this piece right now. At the end, when we do dream interpretations, I may ask him to join me to give you a sense of what a dream club is more like, because there's going to be multiple people reflecting your dream to you, not just me. Um, and he he is deeply steeped in creative writing and storytelling and creativity, and so he deeply understands character and story arcs, and brings a very valuable perspective to the whole thing. So uh, let's get on to the presentation. Okay, so before we start, I'd like us all to take a deep breath, three deep breaths actually. Let's everybody take a deep breath. And bring yourself right here, right now. One more. And another. And I'd like to frame this as a journey. I'd like us all to imagine that we are in a harbor in New York City, and that we are getting on a wooden boat, and it's a paddle boat, and that it is aptly a paddle boat because this is sponsored by We Are the Wheel, and the wheel is a symbol of wholeness and self-healing, circle culture, many things. And so imagine the paddle boat is made of wood. Again, in the dream symbology, wood is a natural substance, so this is a natural journey. And it's taking us out across the water, and it's going to a famous monument. It's going to the Statue of Liberty. And that's the Statue of Liberty. We'll get off and we'll take a stop and we'll talk about sort of the Western interpretation of what dreams are about. The Statue of Liberty is also a great image because she's holding the light to light the darkness, and she's talking about freedom. And part of this work is about becoming free of some of your emotional baggage, for lack of a better word. So, why do we dream? The scientific interpretation is that we're just cataloging past events, marking the transition from short term memory to long term memory. Um, and specifically, it is of those events that happened 5 days ago. Um, the How do they know that? So there was somebody who was studying dreams, and what they did was they had a group of people who were in a setting where were able to control the entire color of the room, of the furniture, of whatever they were eating on for days. And they would have one day that was blue, everything you were saturated in blue. The next one was red, and the next one was yellow. And what they found was that your dream 5 days later was colored by the color of what you were in 5 days later. Um, I'm sure there's more to it in the Western tradition in scientific reasoning, but just wanted to bring that up. Um, and then again, let's get into our boat and let's maybe get out onto the middle of the water and in the Atlantic and talk about another type, and then start talking about types of dreams and what dreams we're going to be talking about and working with as opposed to other dreams. So some dreams are prophetic. There's countless stories in history of people having premonitions through dreams. Scientifically, it would make sense as an evolutionary advantage if you were able to detect something dangerous coming towards you before it would happen. Um, Next, some dreams are psychic communication. I've experienced this. Loved ones who have passed over can visit us in dreams. Uh, I was at one of my best friend's mother's hospital room when she passed, and a few months later, I was in my bedroom and in the dream, she just walked in the room and thanked me for being there to to support my friend and his family. And I was discussing with this bed with Betty, and she said, "Well, how do you know it's a psychic dream?" And the best description I have that always came to me when I saw this, there's a scene in a movie called Rear Window with Jimmy Stewart. It's one of the opening scenes where this man is a reporter. He's laid up because he broke his leg. He's lying back, and the room is dark, and there's this silence in the room. And his girlfriend, like, almost swooshes into the room, and she's like in this luminescent light, just barely glowing. And she comes down and she plants a kiss on his face as he's sleeping. And to me, that gives a sense of what it's like. And it does resonate because Betty also reflected, because there's love. There's love in the experience. And it almost feels hyper real. Um, so that's another type. Lucid dreaming. So this is an interesting place where sort of this work diverges from others. This is a type of dream where your ego starts consciously starts to drive the dream. Um, Dream John said that while this is a fine practice, what he was offering was to allow the dream maker to help you clean your psyche, and it was best if you're in this practice to let the intelligence of the dream maker to lead your dreams. He placed the dream maker's intelligence at 10,000, which is at one point the Chinese number for infinity. When I work with dreams, I do find them to be multi-layered, multifaceted, and able to reflect in many ways, in many levels. And then on the other hand, if we then get into our boat and maybe quickly go over to the land of Tibet, uh, not much water there, but it's a dream boat, so we can get there. Tibetan yoga practice would encourage this approach. In fact, it points out that it's something that everybody has to do alone. And it's something that they would say if you become conscious in your dreams, then you actually have almost like a double amount of a lifetime to work and evolve in. Some of their greatest teachers did work in our waking dream and in our sleeping dream. Health dreams. Um, yeah, I've had dreams that have specifically told me about a health practice or health issue that needs addressing. I remember I was in Hawaii and we were making this amazing kombucha uh, at the retreat center, and I would have some every morning. Um, and it's quite a buzz. And uh, and then I had a dream where I was laying on a mountain of sugar, and and the dream was like, hey, maybe that's a bit much. So I backed it off. I also just very recently had a dream about one of my pets that wasn't feeling well, and I was praying for them to do better, and I had a dream that was very clear about the health issue that was uh, affecting them. Uh, so so the main focus of this work, what I call emotional cleanup dreams. Um, let's again get on our boat and maybe take it over to the Indian Ocean. Uh, and I'll reframe it as the Jungian Ocean because there's a lot in Jungian dream work. There's a lot to explore. But let's start with a map of how these dreams are actually communicated and what a structure of one typically is, so you know that it's one of these. These dreams are structured with four scenes, typically. We can get information without the four scenes, but I, I, I find it helpful to frame it this way. Uh, there will be typically four scenes. The first scene will be an introduction. It's sort of a high-level overview of what the dream is about, what the dream maker is trying to communicate. The second scene will be an elaboration. It might be a very different scene, but it still can be interpreted. More details of what the dream is about. The third scene is typically a block. It's like what's preventing you from moving forward and resolving this held energy or a complex. And then the fourth scene is a resolution. It's like, well, what needs to be done to get over this, or maybe what it looks like once you've worked through it. And then another map, some basic dream symbols. Um, there is a book called The Herder Dictionary of Symbols. It's kind of old school, but that's the one that my dream teacher recommended. Um, and just as a base, here are some symbols. So the strength of the Herder Dictionary of Symbols is that it's cross-cultural. You can have different interpretations of the same symbol, like the line could be strength in one tradition or royalty in another one. They can overlap or vary. I'll go through these symbols quickly. Water, emotions, the unconscious, purifications or purification or rebirth. So what I typically see in dreams is, as again in our imaginary dreamboat on the ocean, the ocean a lot of times represents the subconscious. And so we've spent our lives on the land knowing the material world, but the subconscious covers more of the earth than land does. So there's a lot more in it in some ways. Um, a snake or the serpent, transformation, healing, danger, kundalini energy. A tree, growth, life force, connection between the earth and heaven. The circle, the mandala, wholeness, the self, eternity, integration. The house will often come up in dreams, and it'll be a representation of your psyche or yourself. Different rooms represent different aspects of the mind or the personality. Animals have lots of meanings. Lions, eagles, bears, cats, giraffes. Um, that can be helpful to look that up with AI on the internet. If you don't have a book like this, a lot of these symbols you could also look up with AI. And it can give you at least some understanding of your dream. That's another approach. Um, it's not as interactive as a dream club, and not as rich, I would say. Um, light and dark, consciousness versus the unconscious, the seen versus the unseen. A cross, a union of opposites, suffering or a spiritual center. Birds, the soul, freedom, messages from the higher self. Fire, passion, destruction, transformation, or purification. And cars often show up in dreams because we all have, well, many of us have professions, and I associate cars with your drives, um, in a way, your desires. But a lot of times it's your professional life. Uh, so, Jungian psychology, the anima and the animus. Um, Sometimes what comes up in a dream is a woman who would be, for a woman, it would be the image of a close male figure in her life, and it's called the animus. For a man, the image of a close female figure in his life, called the anima. These are typically very trusted partners to the person having the dream. The basic idea is that when a child is living with their adults, their giants, they are subject to the wills of the giants, who their lives depend on. And because of this, meeting the adult's needs can have an emotional charge of life or death to our child. It can feel that emotionally charged. So when the child's personality is forming, psyche will form what they call distortions or masks in the child's natural personality in order to meet the demands of the adults. So, for example, a child might have had to have been seen and not heard. And in complying, a child may have suppressed their natural gregariousness, and this might show up in the anima or animus uh, in the dream, trying to expose that this is what took place. An image might be the animus with tape over their mouth or something like that. Um, So, because this is a distortion of the child's natural personality, um, that's why the image of that person or that is the opposite sex. It's the polarity. Um, and then the closeness of the characters to show that this was done in order to help the child survive and get through that part of life. Um, Another way to look at it is the anima represents the unconscious feminine side of a man's psyche, and the animus represents the unconscious masculine side of a woman's psyche. So, thank you, Betty, to this map of maybe what some of the more positive aspects of the divine masculine are, or the more positive aspects of the divine feminine on the right, and maybe some of the more shadow aspects that might show up in dreams. Sometimes there's the divided feminine or masculine. So sometimes a dream might have a scene with multiple women or multiple men. This can symbolize to the dreamer that they have a divided view of what it is to be masculine or feminine. These views can be in conflict with each other, and the dream's intent is to illuminate this and help the dreamer resolve the inherent contradictions in these views. So, what dreams, what the dreams are leading us to. So typically when you start this work, the dreams will be of what are the hottest areas, what are the most emotionally charged areas that need to be looked at in your psyche. The goal is of the dream makers to help you get back to your original clear centered state in these areas. Um, it was an interesting resonance when I was looking recently into the Tibetan yoga tradition is that karma in at least what I was reading to them is not an action that we must seek to make amends for, but rather it's an event that we were not able to emotionally process. And so our soul takes a snapshot of this event and stores it until we can and do process it. This is similar to the idea of the Jungian philosophy of distortions in your emotional or psychic field. But it can occur anytime. It doesn't have to be with your parents. Um, and then the emotional cleanup works involves awareness of the held event, feeling the unfelt feelings, and then letting go of attachments by doing forgiveness work. Forgiveness to all involved, including ourselves. I've also seen held emotions released through breath work or somatic release. Um, so dream work is just one of the paths there. Um, and harking into the Pacifica dream work, you can talk to your dream characters after the dream. Uh, so you've written down your dream, you come back to it, and maybe you're not clear about something in it. You can use your imagination to interact with a character in the dream and say, "What would you like to tell me? What are you here to tell me, and what more should I know?" Um, and as my Hawaiian kahuna said, "Imagination is accurate. Please allow it to inform you." A lot of times the West has downplayed it. It's a very valuable tool. Um, all right. And then taking the boat all the way over to China. Um, Traditional Chinese medicine talks about mm, your body going through detox cycles as you sleep. Um, and there'll be different phases. And so the timing of a dream, when did you have a dream could help inform what's going on. If you have a dream around 3 a.m., that might be when your liver is detoxing. And in the traditional Chinese medicine, that associates the liver with held anger. If you have a dream closer to dawn, maybe it's something more inspirational or aspirational. And then just a practical tip. You can keep a written dream journal. You can have it by your bed. You can have a light. You can have your pen ready. Once you set the intention to have dreams talk to you, they'll become more active in my experience. They'll talk to you more. And you're like, oh, wow, you're ready to listen. Um, And another thing that I think is helpful is you can use a note-taking program on your phone. I like Best Note on iPhone. Uh, just get to a new note, tap the microphone on the keyboard and just start talking. Uh, the other the other thing that I find helpful is to allow myself to recount the dream backwards because it's often easier to remember that way. And so that's uh, that's the presentation. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Carl, so much for everything that you shared with us. That was really wonderful, and I actually learned a lot. Um, are you ready for questions and answers?
Yeah, yeah, then we can take some questions and answers before we get
Okay.
to dream
So,
interpretation.
would anybody like to um, ask any questions? Angel,
Hey,
Angel, good.
thank you. Thanks, Carl. I unfortunately was having technical difficulties and I missed a few minutes. Um, I was curious about night terrors. Did you
Mm.
speak to those or could you speak to those?
Yeah, so I don't have a lot of experience with that. I would I would say my initial take would be Psyche's really amping up the energy for you to try and listen. That something is very charged or emotionally alive for somebody if that's happening. It sort of relates to a phase of this dream work that can happen. I don't think it's the same thing, but as you're going through your journey of cleaning up, there can be a phase where dreams get very intense and there's um, images of volcanoes or images of, hurricanes, natural disasters, or right pandemonium. Um, that is typically a sign that in this work that your old personality is ready to be let go of. It can even be a dream of dying. That again, that personality that you've held for a while is being dropped, and that you're ready to start moving on to the next person you're becoming, a cleaner version of yourself. Um, yeah, that would be my initial take on that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let me just say one thing before Meredith, you'll go next. Now that we're in the Q&A portion of the meeting, please raise your virtual hands if you'd like to ask the speaker a question. I'll call on people